On behalf of myself, Kevin Whitty, and Performance Fuel Injection Systems, I want to thank you for your purchase of your 4.2 liter 258 Jeep fuel injection, throttle body fuel injection kit. Today we're going to fuel inject this 85 Jeep CJ7, and we're going to remove the carburetor and we're going to convert this to throttle body fuel injection. We are doing this video to show you some of the basic installation, also to show you what some of the people have called on questions, so hopefully this video will answer a lot of your questions. I have in front of us the kit that you are going to receive. Basically, you have a throttle body. This is all rebuilt. We have an adapter plate. We do some labeling on these. We'll go into this when we start installing it. The distributor, this distributor is customized. We take the 4-pin ignition module out, put the 7-pin in. This is going to plug in to the harness. On the distributor, you'll notice there's some arrows. And there's also arrows on the distributor cap. When you put this on, make sure that these arrows are lined up. For some reason, this distributor cap will go on a different way, and it will cause problems in the timing. So we mark these. Basically, if you can remember, the harness that comes up to the distributor cap has got to be in line with the base of the distributor. We give you gaskets, mounting bolts, fuel tubes. Here's an external fuel pump. We're going to show you where we put that in. The oxygen sensor comes with an O2 bung to weld into your exhaust. There's an installation video. There's an installation CD. This has all your installation on it. All your sensors are here. The fusible link, we will go into detail on that when we hook that up. That goes between the battery and the harness. The harness is all marked. Throttle TPS, throttle position sensor, has an ALDL port, so you can either hook a scanner up or you can take a paper clip A and B and count the engine light flashes. ECM, we're going to mount this inside the cab. This is not waterproof, so this has to be out of the elements. If you're going to mount this underneath the hood, I suggest that you put it in a waterproof box. We do have in the past used a plastic electrical box and mounted in there. Not very often. So that being said, we are going to get started on this Jeep, and hopefully you'll enjoy this video. We've done a little bit of preliminary on the Jeep. We're going to show you where we mount some of the sensors, and hopefully sit back and enjoy your video. Okay, what we're going to do, safety first. We're going to disconnect the battery and take this off, so we're going to set that aside. Next, we're going to take the fuel pump off, and we're going to install the fuel pump block off plate. Also, while we're on this side, we've already taken off the fuel line going over to the carburetor. We're going to replace the distributor cap, this distributor. I'm going to take the cap off here in a minute, and I'm going to show you how I do it. Make sure you remember where number 1 spark plug is. On this one, it's straight down. So the spark plug wire, number 1, remember that, it's straight down. We have installed the distributor. We took the coil off. You will no longer need the coil because there's a coil built into the cap onto the distributor. So we will just discard this. Remember when I had the rotor pointing down to like number 1? I put the distributor back into the same place. Now this vacuum advance is there's a sticker on it that says do not hook up. We will not be hooking up. It's just there for the looks, I guess. There's a 4-pin weather pack. When we modify the distributor that comes out of the bottom of the distributor, this will plug into the fuel injection harness. The other harness that goes into the bottom of the cap is right here. So, and we've already put the clamp back on it. You can see the fuel pump's off. I've taken the spark plug wires off for a little bit better accessibility. The the oil dipstick tube was mounted to the coil bracket. We just move that out of the way. We'll hook it back up after we get the distributor cap. Charlie's removing the carburetor over here, and shortly we'll be putting the adapter plate on and installing the throttle body. So in a few minutes here we'll be doing that. We've taken the throttle bracket off. There's a cable, the throttle cable, and we're going to have to fabricate our own bracket for the throttle linkage. We've installed the adapter plate on here. There's a sticker on here that says fill holes with silicone after bolting to the manifold. The bolts come, they're countersunked. I'm going to take this sticker off and we're going to fill them holes with silicone. And this is to prevent any vacuum leaks. This is very critical because if you have a vacuum leak, it's going to cause you some idle issues. So we fill them holes with silicone. Kind of take your finger and in here. Then put the gasket on. You probably will see some silicone come squirting out of the sides of that. We're going to clean that up a little bit here. And we are going to install our throttle body. These are stainless steel bolts also, and with stainless washers. We supply these with the kit. I do this when that silicone's a little bit wet. I put the gasket on there. That way the gaskets, you're gonna get a good seal. I snug these up good, and then we have that on. We're gonna have to build a bracket for our throttle linkage, and we will probably do that, and we'll be back. We're going to mount a few sensors here shortly, and we'll show you where we do that. We took this coolant sensor out. It was something to do with the original, and we right in the manifold, and then we put our coolant sensor in here, and there's already thread tight on it, a thread lock tight on it, or pipe dope, or whatever you want to call it. So we just snugged it up. We literally took the coolant sensor out and had the other one in our hand, screwed it right in, and with very minimal coolant loss. This particular Jeep was an electronic carburetor, and it had an oxygen sensor in the manifold. We removed that one, which is a single wire. We're going to put this 3-wire heated O2 sensor in, and we're going to put it right back in there. Now, if your Jeep has not got it already threaded in the manifold, once we put this on the hoist to put the fuel pump in, we will show you where we weld in the bung for the O2 sensor, which is usually downstream. Reason being, that's why we use a heated O2 sensor, so you can run them downstream. Now, we have removed the coil from the engine. This here is connected to the coil. This actually looks like a Ford type of connector. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to take the power wire that is on the coil, that would be the positive side, and we are going to tap that into the distributor cap. I don't know why they call it battery. It says BAT. Big questions are, people call up, they don't have any spark. It's because they did not supply power to the distributor cap. Now, we also, when we take this red wire off, we also tap the 12-volt ignition wire into that wire also. So basically, the 12-volt ignition wire and the power wire for the coil, the positive side of the coil, if you don't have a coil like this, we put that to the distributor cap marked battery. And then if you have a tachometer, there's right next to it says tach, and you can take the tach feed off from the that terminal right there. It says tach, and then you can run that into inside the cab of the Jeep. If you notice, I've already probably mentioned this, but there's arrows on that. We marked this, and these arrows are lined up with a couple of arrows on the base. This wiring harness that comes from the base of the distributor plugs into there, but the cap goes on there. As you can see, the arrows lined up. Now, we're gonna hook that up, and then we'll be back to the installation. Okay, now that we got our Jeep on the hoist, we're gonna show you where we mount the fuel pump. On this particular model, this is a 1985, the fuel line runs up the passenger side of the frame rail. And we're gonna mount the fuel pump right up underneath onto the fuel rail with the clamps that are supplied with there's a strap that goes on this that are supplied with it. And we're gonna mount the fuel pump underneath the skid plate. Now, some of these, the fuel line runs up the driver's side, some of them run up the passenger side. I don't know why this is, but also on the fuel pump, you can see we have a sticker, and I get a lot of calls. The large screw is actually the ground on these fuel pumps, and the small one is the positive. So there's plenty of wire that comes out of the harness to come down here. Now, just a little ways back from there, we are going to cut the fuel line, and then we're going to install our filter and then the pump. And then what I always do is from the pump up to the throttle body, I sneak it up and over the bell housing and into the throttle body. Usually about 3 feet of high pressure line is good enough. If you're going to go to the store and buy some fuel injection line, I'd buy 4 feet. 5/16 will be sufficient, and we will run that, like I said, over the bell housing and into the throttle body. Now that we have our fuel pump installed, we use the boots, and this is the power, and we tighten them down. The ground, we actually made a ground strap, a short ground strap, and ground it right back to the frame. Put our high pressure fuel line on it. On this one, I think we got 4 feet. We routed it up over the bell housing and up to the throttle body, and then we'll cut off what we don't need up on top. As you can see, I don't know if you can see it very well, but our fuel filter is before the fuel pump. And again, I can't stress this enough. The large terminal on the fuel pump is the ground and the small terminal is the pink. Now, there was plenty of wire. I think we had to cut off about 4 or 5 feet. So if you have to, you can mount the fuel pump further back on the frame. This is on the frame. This is an excellent location because it's pretty close to the bottom of the fuel tank. Plus, it's underneath this skid plate, so the brush is going to protect the fuel pump.
We cut our fuel line here and we removed the line that went up to the mechanical fuel pump. We did loosen this up, and then we put the 5/16 hose over this, the fuel line, and then to the filter, and then we put this back on. So very easy. These self-tapping screws come out, and the line will come out far enough to get your pipe cutter in there to cut the line.
I'm going to show you where we install the oxygen sensor. With the oxygen sensor, you get a bung, and it's usually screwed onto your oxygen sensor in the bag. You can run these downstream because they're heated. And what I always do is make sure that you have a place where you can get to it. Now, the oxygen sensor should be horizontal. Do not mount it like this or upside down. Horizontal or up and down like that. If you take this to a muffler shop and have them drill, they'll usually drill it and weld it for about less than 20 bucks or less, and then you screw your O2 sensor in it. Remember earlier, ours was already had the oxygen sensor provision in the manifold, so we opted out of putting this down here and put it into the manifold. So that's how that is. Now, long as you're down in this area, the return line, this has a return line. This is the 85 model again. The return line is up here on the frame rail, and that's where we'll be putting our return fuel. And what we do is we'll put the fuel line on, and then we'll shoot it up towards the throttle body, and we'll hook it up. After we hook it up, we'll go through some tests, like priming the pump, which I always do anyways, and so, and then we'll go from there. We're back up on top here now. We've ran our return line and our feed line up. Before I get started on that, I built a bracket, and I got a piece of metal for the throttle linkage. This particular Jeep came with a plastic throttle cable, which went down. I unhooked it. I cut some parts off from the old bracket and welded it on to another bracket, put it back into the same 2 mounting screws that were on there. And this is one area where you will have a little time on these Jeeps fabricating a bracket for your throttle linkage. Now, onto the fuel tubes. In your kit, there'll be 2 fuel tubes. The large one is intake. It's 3/8 neck down to 5/16. The return line is the smaller one, 5/16 neck down to 1/4 inch. Both of our lines coming up are 5/16, so we will cut the 1/4 inch off for any restriction possibly. When you put these in, you will have to bend them. Please do not bend them inside or hooked up to the throttle body. Bend them before you put them in and then test fit them. You could, if you bend them inside there, you could crack the injector pod. I've seen a lot of these come in when we buy these as cores and we rebuild them. I can tell if they've yanked and cranked on them because the injector pods are cracked. So what we will do is we will bend these lines, and then we'll hook up our fuel return and our fuel feed. Now, and like I said, test fit them to make sure everything clears. This might look a little bit different for now because we're going to put a fuel gauge on the pressure side, and that is where you do check your fuel pressure, is on the feed side. We are priming the fuel pump. What I've actually done is I've taken a hot wire, a wire with alligator clips, and I've went down to the positive side of the fuel pump, and this is exactly what I was telling you about. We could run into some problems. Now watch, when I touch the power, the pressure goes off the wall. It's actually too much. So this is one of the problems that we do run into with these old Jeeps. The return line has a restriction in it. So what we're going to have to do is either find out what's causing the restriction in it, or run a new return line. So we will do that now. We're going to troubleshoot this, and we will be back shortly. Well, just like I thought, we had a blockage in the return line. We've figured it out, we've cleaned it out, and we've got it back up. And when we hook our power up to the fuel pressure gauge, you can see now it's a little right there around 11 psi. We are gonna look into that. Possibly when we had too much fuel pressure, we may have damaged the regulator, but it should be right around 12 psi. But you can see now, as we have the fuel pump, we got the fuel pump actually hot wired. You can see on the gauge that there is 11 psi. So we figured that out. I'm glad that happened. I'm glad and I'm not. I do get people from time to time. A very, very high pressure causes a very rich condition. In the kit, we supply this fusible link, and this is going to be to the battery power, which will be a thick 14 gauge red wire coming off the harness. When we've hooked it up to the battery, we supply you with a fuse, and that goes in there. Now, this is an easy way also to clear your codes. Instead of disconnecting the battery, just pull the fuse out to clear the codes. Like when you set the distributor timing, when you unplug for the set timing connector, you're going to it's going to pull a code 42. Well, when you get done, you can pull this fuse to clear your codes, and you're all set. Usually I leave it unplugged for about 30 seconds, and that clears the codes. This is the brain box, ECM, ECU, computer, whatever you want to call it. We've removed the glove box, and this computer, or ECU, will go behind here, and we usually sit it right on top of the box. Now, on this one, we'll probably take some Velcro and put some Velcro on here, and then stick it right to the top. And then here's where the harness that came through the firewall, and we will hook that in. There's clips on these that lock into here. So when we put that in there, that's out of sight. On there is the it says Performance Fuel Injection Systems, and it'll say the ECM number and the chip file number. From time to time, somebody might call, and I might need that number off that to troubleshoot some stuff. Now, we have an ALDL port, which is actually a diagnostic port. It's marked ALDL. We will mount this underneath the dash here. This is where you would actually hook your scanner up. You hook a scanner up, it's an OBD1. If you don't have a scanner, you take a piece of wire or a paper clip like I do, and then you'll jumper A and B, and then that will flash your check engine light. And it's also, we'll go over that in a few minutes about setting the throttle plates. So we usually mount that underneath here, a couple screws. We mounted our check engine light right here. You drill a 1/2-inch hole, and then there's 2 wires on the harness that are marked check engine, a pink and an orange. It does not matter what side they go to, hook them up to either way. the 1/2-inch hole, then you can just push the check engine light in, and this will tell you when you have a trouble code, it'll turn on. And then, like I said earlier, on the ALDL port, if you don't have a scanner, you can jumper A and B, turn the ignition to the on position, and then the engine light will flash. I'll go through a little bit of that in a second here. We ran our wiring harness. Remember, this had an electronic carburetor. There's a grommet here. We reused the hole, and then we put the harness through there. We kind of modified that. Our map sensor, we mounted to the firewall. Remember, the map sensor, we like it when the port is facing down. That's a vacuum port, and we run the vacuum line over to the throttle body, and there is a port that is in between the fuel inlet and the fuel return, and that's full manifold vacuum. Our PVC we hooked up to the large vacuum port in the front here. We put this little chrome air cleaner on it, but most of the connectors you can't put them in different. So right now we're going to start this up, and one thing I do want to explain is sometimes when we first are starting these, they're going to either run way too low or way too high. Now remember one thing, these will always run when they're cold at about 1400 RPMs, and then they will back down. What we're going to do right now is we're going to start it up, and then we're going to take a quick break. We're going to warm it up, and then we're going to set the idle, and I'll show you what I do, how I set the idle. So Charlie, you want to fire it up? Okay, Charlie. Okay, did you notice when it was first started up, it idled up quite high? This is very normal. Until they get warmed up, they're going to run at a higher idle. Now this one, we're going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to warm it up, get it up to operating temperature, and then we're going to set our timing. The reason why we do that is because on the timing, when it's cold, it actually adds timing so they start good. So we want the engine warmed up, operating temperature, to set the timing. What we're going to do now is we're going to set the timing up on it. We've already warmed it up for a couple of minutes. Now remember, there's a 4-pin wire harness that plugs into the distributor, and there's a little blue wire with a single pin weather pack connector. This is how you're going to set your timing. I have the timing light hooked up, and I already got the distributor loosened up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Charlie start the engine, and then we're going to disconnect that wire, and when I do that, you'll notice a difference in the change in the engine. So go ahead, Charlie, start it up. There's that high idle again that will come down. I'm going to wait a few seconds for that to come down. And then I'm going to unplug the distributor to set the timing. So now there'll be a definite change in idle. Actually, and now it's running. Sometimes they will stall out if you don't have the timing set just right. And my timing on here, I set this at 8 degrees. And right now, if you can see on my timing light, I got it set at 8 degrees, and then I point it to the 0, and I got to adjust this here. Actually, I'm going to set this one at 6. And now I got it right at 6 degrees. And I'm going to tighten the distributor down, and hopefully it will stay. And it did. It did stay at 6 degrees. So, now remember one other thing is when you unplug that wire, the check engine light will come on and it'll store a code 42. So, Charlie, you want to turn the Jeep off, please? And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you. We're going to go back to that ALDL connector, and I'm going to show you on that ALDL connector, and I'm going to show you the engine light flashes so that what is the code means and how to read it. So I'll get a paper clip. You can use a piece of wire too, but I'll get a paper clip and I'll be right back. Here's what I was telling you about. Take a paper clip in between A and B, and then put it in there, and then turn the ignition to the on position. Now, this is automatically going to flash a code 12. As you can see, it flashes once and then twice. This will do it 3 times. Code 12 means it's in diagnostic mode. Now, the next one will be that code 42 that when we set the timing. If you see that the check engine lights flashed 4 times, and now 2 times, and it's going to do that 3 times. Now, that is always going to do it. When it gets done with code 42, it's going to go back to code 12, flash 3 times, code 12, and then I'll flash code 42. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and turn it off. When you do this, make sure that you don't start the engine just with the key on, with the paper clip in. You take the paper clip out. I'm going to show you now if we can get around to the battery area. Remember that fusible link that we had hooked up? This is how I clear the codes in the computer. I pull the fuse, that kills the power to the computer, and then it also clears the codes. I usually leave this unhooked for about 20 seconds to 30 seconds, and then you'll hook it back in. Now, remember, when you plug it back in, if you do put the paper clip back in to check your codes, it's still going to flash a code 12, and then it'll flash the other codes. Now, I'm going to hook up the distributor wire that when we did the timing. I cleared the codes. I'm going to put this fuse back in, and we'll be all set, and the computer will have no code stored. Now remember, when you do that, you're clearing all the memory out of the computer. This computer will store a little bit of memory, mostly idle memory. So this will actually learn idle tables throughout however long you have it, or until you clear that out. When you pull that fuse, it clears all the memory in the computer. Now we're going to set the throttle plates. Back to the paper clip. Put the paper clip in A and B. Turn the ignition to the on position. You're going to want to wait a few seconds, and then what we want to do is we want to unplug the IAC valve. Now, I can feel this thing clicking, and what it does, what it's doing is it's seating the IAC all the way in, and you want to unplug it. We waited about 20 seconds, and then I am going to disconnect the paper clip from the ALDL port, and then we're going to start it up. And I've got my timing light set here. My timing light actually has a tachometer on it, and I'm going to have Charlie start it up now. And you notice that it didn't rev up real high. It is running high right now. And the tachometer is at 1200 RPMs. And what we want to do is we want to adjust this down to about 750, between 725 and 750. And you can see it's bouncing around a little bit there. So now that we have that, what I do is I plug the IAC back in and then turn the engine off. Now remember, you may have to start the engine 2 or 3 times to reset the IAC, which is happening is the IAC's got to learn its memory where it's at. So usually you wait a few seconds, about 30 seconds in between. Sometimes you get lucky, especially if you plug it in while it's running. Sometimes you don't. So I'm going to have Charlie fire it up again. You notice it went up to 1400. And now the biggest thing of it is if it don't come down right away within that 15-20 second period, well, we did luck out. It came down. Now once it runs a little bit, it'll come all the way down to that 650 RPMs. Now, one other thing we do have to do when you're messing with the throttle plates, we have to reset the throttle position sensor. And I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to go get my multimeter and we'll do that. And that, you do not want the engine running for that. So we can kill the engine. Now, I've got a multimeter set up and I've got these really pointy things on my multimeter, and we're gonna set the TPS. You're gonna want to go between the brown and the black with the white stripe. Now, you can poke it right by the wire, and then you can get a good reading. We want 0.5 volts. Now remember, in order to get the voltage, you turn the key to the on position again, and don't start it. And as you can see, we're at 0.42 volts. We've loosened up the throttle position sensor, and we're going to try to move this here. I went the wrong way. And we want 0.5 volts. And there's 0.48. So we want 0.5 volts right there, 0.52. Hopefully when we tighten this down, it'll get back to the 0.5 that we want. That's fairly close. Did you turn it off, Charlie? No. Oh, okay. I don't know what happened here. Oh, I lost my, okay. We got 0.52 volts. Let's see if we can get it just a cooler bit more. I guess, well, that'll be good. Usually if it's 0.48 through like 0.54, 0.56, that'll be fine. We'll tighten this down, and then we can be done with the throttle plates. And that's how you set that without a scanner. There is one wire, it's called, and there's a label on it called crank. On these Jeeps, they have a solenoid that engages a starter. You want to hook the tan wire up to the wire that actually energizes the starter. Okay, now some of the other things I want to go over just briefly is this distributor has a vacuum advance on it, and we usually put a sticker on, do not hook up, so we don't hook that up. That's just along to look at. Another quick thing I want to do is what is overlooked, and I can't express this more, is on the distributor, make sure that you have power coming in to the battery side. This is 12-volt ignition power. Earlier I said that we tap into the coil wire and then put that into the side on the distributor that says battery. If you don't have injector pulse, more than likely it's because you do not have power to your distributor. Okay, another thing that I wanted to point out is, remember, on our adapter plate, remember we put some silicone in them holes. If you don't put silicone in them holes, you'll get a very high idle. You're getting actually a vacuum leak. These are machined, and the holes for the throttle body that goes, the adapter plate that goes onto the manifold are so close to the holes on the throttle body that we actually have to fill that with silicone. And so then, if you don't get that sealed up, you'll get a high idle. We supply you with a threaded rod for your air cleaner, and you will have to modify this. We put a sticker on it that says modification is required. So we just put like a little S bend in it in the vise. The extra ports, vacuum ports, we plug off. We put caps over them. We won't be using them. I don't know if anybody has any, I mean, if you do happen to have a vacuum operated transfer case or front axle, you might want to take some off from there, but basically you're not going to need one. Also, one other thing, remember when we adjusted the throttle position sensor? Now, if for some reason this throttle position sensor gets out of adjustment and it goes down to like 0.2 to 0.3 volts, two things can happen, can cause that to happen. This can come out of adjustment, or the throttle plates are closed too far. If that happens and this throttle position sensor gets below 0.3 volts, it's going to go into stall mode and it's going to open the IAC, which will cause a high idle also. So just because you have a high idle may not be because you have a vacuum leak. It might be because your throttle position sensor is out of adjustment. Other than that, we're here Monday through Thursday, 8 until 3 Eastern Standard Time, and you can give me a call at 517-975-4770. It's on my card that's in the disc, the installation disc. And it will also be, and when we get this video done, we are going to include a DVD in the Jeep kit. I highly recommend that you watch it in its entirety before you attempt putting this on. I've had people put this on that have a basic automotive skills. I've actually had very good success with it. So we do thank you very much for your purchase. And as always, here at Performance Fuel Injection, We don't gas it, we inject it. Okay, when it comes to an air cleaner, the air cleaner with a 4-barrel base will fit on the throttle body. So an aftermarket air cleaner like this is around 20 bucks or less, and it will fit right on top of there. I always like the ones that have the little rise in the lip here. The concave ones, you'll have to put a little spacer in there. So basically, you can get this out of Summit. They're less than 20 bucks, and they fit very well and they work very well. As for myself, Kevin Whitty, and the guys here at Performance Fuel Injection Systems, I want to thank you for watching this video. Whether you are thinking about putting fuel injection on your Jeep, or you have already bought a system for your Jeep, for your 6-cylinder, 258, 4.2 liter. These systems are in stock and usually ship within 1 or 2 days. I hope all your questions have been answered. We can also be reached by telephone at 517-975-4770, or you can visit us on the web at pfisys.com.